boy. All righty then. These boots are made for walking, Brian, but not on a face. They are made to walk on down the street and check in with our friends at AEW Wrestling. They did Dynamite again. They did it again. They did it again, Brian. And this time from Boston, Massachusetts. I forgot what they call it's a music hall there. What's the name of this place? The something music hall. What are you laughing at?
I will look it up. Say Massachusetts again.
Massachusetts.
Let me get this for you.
Well, that's the way they used to say it when I was a kid in first grade, because we couldn't pronounce Massachusetts back then. But they were in the music hall up there, and they're on the same tune.
The MGM Music Hall at Fenway.
Does that have something to do with MGM Studios or films, or is this more MGM that owns Faversham West County?
No, I think I would guess. I don't know for sure, but I will say it looked really good. I thought the venue looked great on TV.
Well, it looked
incredible. Yeah.
Yes, because they've got to the point where they've got the buildings down to where they can fill up what they need to fill up to be seen on camera. But we got to talk about the milestone, because they made it, and a lot of people are saying they just wanted to troll, as the kids say, poor old Eric Bischoff. And he looks like a troll. He looks like he's living under a bridge. He might be. But they wanted to troll Eric Bischoff by saying that they had become the longest primetime wrestling program in TBS history. Is that the way that they phrased it?
I think so.
They outlasted Nitro by one show with this one or whatever. But was that really I guess for Tony's a numbers nerd, and you can do anything you want with numbers, but was that kind of a weak fucking swing and maybe a miss? Yeah, our show has been on the station in a particular time longer than the other programs that have been on the station that were on for decades longer, and that 10 times more people watched. But still, because ours has been in this one particular day part for a while. Yay! Is it a big deal?
It did seem like they overdid it. The only people really going crazy with it on social media were like diehard AEW fans who look for like everything positive about AEW, but no one else really cared. On the show, gee, at the very end, Excalibur and Shivani were just fucking blowing each other, going crazy, fucking, oh, we're going to be here next week, and the week after, and the weekend. Yeah, this is great. I love it. Yeah. It was so fucking awful.
We're not going anywhere. He actually fucked up saying we're not going anywhere. It was like, we have plans to not go away where they are.
And the other thing is, not to defend Eric Bischoff, because I don't even think that's what this is, even though I think this is about, I think the way they went over the top, part of it is a fuck you to Eric Bischoff. I do think that from their perspective. But Eric Bischoff, for good and for bad, had a different animal than Tony Khan in terms of ownership and financing. And, you know, it's not like it was an equal race with two parties just going out there. I know you're going to say, oh, Ted Turner. Yeah, but by the end, first of all, Ted Turner wasn't hands-on, and Ted Turner wasn't even there by the end. And Tony has endless money to do this. WCW eventually didn't. And, you know, it's just, I don't think it's an apples to orange, or I guess apples to apples. I don't think I'm making any sense, but I don't think
it's apples to sardines is the comparison.
Yeah, it's not the exact same thing. It's not the same animal.
Well, and also you can look at the fact that WCW went spectacularly out of business doing 3 or 4 times the viewers that Tony does now when everything's great. So,
and Tony's about to enter a period of time where the only thing he's going to be able to do is overpay. So it's going to be very interesting to see where it goes.
But I'm not one to go straight into the doom and gloom, but I did think it was funny. It's like, if they were on the air on the station longer than any other wrestling program, or they were viewed by more people than any other wrestling program, or some clear-cut milestone, then I would say brag about it. But we've been on the air longer in this particular time, even though,
Then
as I
Nitro,
said,
without saying Nitro. They just wanted to say Nitro.
without
And they
saying
couldn't.
Nitro.
Yeah, they just couldn't say Nitro. But it was all about, we've now been here longer than Nitro, which is a Bischoff creation. It was a fuck you to Bischoff.
When I was on the booking committee in WCW in '89, the Friday night Power Hour was the weakest of the three programs, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. And the Power Hour did twice as many viewers on a Friday night after baseball as both of Tony's shows do now combined. Let that sink in. Anyway, we go to this sinker of a show. Boy, the Boston Tea Party. They should have thrown this son of a bitch overboard. Good Lord. I gotta say this at the beginning. I'm amazed at I wouldn't do this if this was when I was getting in the business, and I'm amazed that anybody with any sense anymore wants to get in the wrestling business with what you have to do to yourself seemingly in order to be part of this traveling road show. I mean, in all seriousness, you could look at wrestling at any time over the 100 years of the 20th century, whatever era it was in. And if you were an athlete or an athletic guy and you got smartened up to what was going on, even if you didn't get smartened up to what was going on, if you were an athlete or an athletic guy, you could look at this shit and you could say, I could do that, or I might want to do that, or that might not be too bad to try this type of thing. But now, Brian, what kind of fucking moron wants to, at this point, train and dream and actively hope to be involved in a fucking business where not only do you have to fling yourself off high objects through all kinds of furniture and sharp objects, but you have to let guys half your fucking size just pick you up and throw you around or give you moves willy-nilly that you don't know how the fuck you're going to land or where you're going to come down from. I don't know how they're getting anybody anymore to fucking it. I mean, I know that that everything changes, and Carl Gotch said that Harley Race was a fucking ballet dancer and he was too over the top. But at what point
But what does Carl Gotch know?
Well, but at what point do normal level-headed fucking people say, well, you got to be a goddamn idiot to want to do that shit? Everybody's either hurt or been operated on or about to be operated on or always on an injured list or stove up in some fashion or about to be fused. And again, just continuing. It wasn't even bad with the furniture. They didn't do the Home Depot hour on AEW this week, but just the things that they're inventing that they think when they talk about it, oh, we could do it this way and you could land that way. And sometimes these things go awry. But is it just all about, let's figure out an artistic way to do a fucking 480-degree flip and go head first through some goddamn object?
You know, I think that's part of it. The other thing is the whole do-si-do aspect of everything. So much of it just looks like guys who have a square dance routine they figured out, and it coincides with someone else's square dance routine.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, between that style and then realizing, I think everyone nowadays, when you watch wrestling, even the people that are like, oh, it's fake, they even recognize, yeah, these guys get hurt. Everyone gets hurt if you fall down, let alone all the time.
Right.
But, you know, now it's just such a different animal in terms of When guys got hurt when I was a kid watching, they got hurt in the ring. Now, like, you don't even know when they're hurt, but it looks like every single thing is doing long-term damage. And a lot of it probably is. And like you said, trusting your body to the other person, if there's no structure around that, no mental structure in the wrestlers or no supervising producer of the segment or match or whatever it is, if you leave people to their own devices, it may get the stars they want, it may get the ooze they want, but it may not be the best thing for their bodies. It may not be the best thing for what they're doing, but also, yeah, it's not as appealing as watching guys win squash matches on TV.
Well, and that's another thing is, I don't know whether it's more dangerous today, the bumps they're taking or the goofy idiots that they're allowing to give them bumps. Yeah. That may be, more to the point. But again, I just think, my God, I go back to a period of time where guys were wrestling 6 days a week, 7 days a week. And their living depended on taking care of each other and not doing stupid shit, but at the same time, drawing money and getting the point across. And instead of trying to invent these ridiculous moves, which require obvious cooperation and balancing and steadiness to be able to pull off and execute a backflip off the top of the cage or whatever, and that the risk is high at the same time, they managed to simulate combat without fucking taking unnecessary risks that led to serious injuries and surgeries and structural damage. And I think Bill Dundee, who worked 28 days a month in the Tennessee Territory for 9 straight years. I think the longest he was ever off was a month when he had the fucking dust up with Savage in the parking lot of the gym. Had to have his jaw wired shut.
Yeah, but to answer your question, I think Memphis wrestling is the kind of wrestling that inspired people to say, I think I could do that. Or I want to get into the business. And I'm not even talking about people who got into the business, just the general nature of it, where it was talking shit, getting into fights, and then those matches, as painful and brutal as they were, and you've seen those pictures of like everyone with black eyes and cuts. I mean, Memphis had the great photos of like Sputnik Monroe all busted up. Like it didn't look as scary.
Do you want a black eye or a neck fusion?
Yeah, it's not as scary as falling off a ladder to me. I'd rather get punched in the face.
Yes.
I've been punched in the face. Falling off a ladder is still a new thing that I don't want to do.
Yes, and say that's what I'm saying is that I just don't know what their minds are thinking when they just continue to do this repetitive shit over and over. What do the kids call it? Spamming. The moves and the moves and the moves and the moves, and they're just beating each other up and breaking each other down, and there's not a lot of room for error in this shit when they're tucking their heads, and it draws no money because it stands out, because it makes no fucking, or because it doesn't stand out, because it's no different than anything else that anybody else is doing. But try having a good-looking fucking fight where somebody gets a black eye and people would freak the fuck out.
What caused this? What was there anything specific on the show, or was it just everything?
Well, actually, yeah, I was going for. I'll not even do this in chronological order. I'll jump into Will Ospreay and take a shit. I mean, everybody. This is an Uncle Dave specialty, and they do all these moves wonderfully. But again, I guess Milli Vanilli sounds different if you just want to take some fucking drugs and listen to the kids play some music than if you're a goddamn experienced musician and record producer that knows that it's not even really them. But let me just, again, there was a couple of things in this Meltzer special. 22 minutes of video game moves that made no sense, because it's another dream match in the Owen Hart tournament. They had the match that you would expect they have. They're very athletic fellows. Of course, at the 15-minute mark, they were trading forearms. But there's a couple of spots. Ospreay gives Take a kick and rears back and goes for his shitty elbow finish. But his Take is on his knees. He's so beaten up, he collapses flat of his face on the ground. So what does his opponent do that's still in the middle of a match with him? He stops and stands there and stares at him while a referee gets down and checks on him. Are you okay? Cover the motherfucker. What? I swear to fucking God, he acted like he didn't know what to do when he had kicked his opponent in the head, and his opponent's so fucking fucked up and dizzy and on Dream Street that he can't even stand upright on his knees. You don't think to just cover him? And then the referee starts backing Ospreay up like, oh, I think he's really hurt. Well, then cover him. But instead, then Take a Shit jumps up at 100% and gives Ospreay the Blue Thunder Bomb. So the babyface, besides being an idiot, is also a sucker. You're in a goddamn match with a guy, and a guy fucking falls down in front of you. Brian, how smart do you have to be to just cover him?
You brought this up the other day. I don't even remember exactly what the example was, but it was like, maybe in the Pac match, where it's like, I don't know what to do. My opponent is injured. You pin him.
Yes,
beat
yes,
him.
yes.
That's what you do.
Beat him. Beat him. My opponent is helpless at my feet and can't defend himself. What could I do? Beat him. So then, after fucking Take a Shit, I'm back to calling him that all the time now, because Jesus Christ. After he suckers the babyface, hits the Blue Thunder Bomb, Ospreay gets back up and starts doing flips, and then they hit each other with some shit and got 1 counts. And then Ospreay hit 2 big moves on Take, and Take stood up and leveled him without selling either one of them. And then they gingerly helped each other climb up to the top rope and balance there while throwing weak little midsection shots so that Take could clothesline Ospreay while they're both standing on the top rope, so Ospreay could backflip and land on his feet in the ring. Apparently that means that Take a Shit hits like a goddamn 6-year-old girl, because if you can be clotheslined by this guy and have the wherewithal, I'll just do a backflip and land on my feet, then what the fuck? I don't see at this point how you could ever train these guys to put a match together and break the bad habits that Ospreay has learned from being indie bound all his life, and Take is learning now from being in with all the indie minded goofballs instead of in a good developmental program.
Well, I think that's it. We've learned what the way is. The way is they get signed to WWE and all of a sudden they get in line. They get signed. That's what happens.
They're not you. I'm afraid you can't break some bad habits, and you can't, when somebody has been indoctrinated with a line of bogus bullshit thinking, see the average Trump supporter, you can't fucking even give them facts and get them back. They've got bad habits that are established, especially Take. Ospreay, they can do all these things athletically, but they have no idea how to put a fucking match together for anybody other than this indie fucking crowd that Tony is now running off and is dwindling over this shit. But and then finally, Ospreay hit his finish, but he covered him, got a 2 count. So the next move, Ospreay ran at Take, and Take hit him with a boot and went to suplex him, but Ospreay flipped out and they rolled around, and Ospreay hit him with a Styles Clash and got a 2 count. And then they did more back and forth, and Ospreay just hit some fucking thing, 1, 2, 3. It's just they act like anything that happened more than 30 seconds ago never happened. The heel barely cheats, nobody sells anything, and then it's over. They're world-class gymnasts with no wrestling basics. They can backflip from 20 feet in the air, land on their fucking feet. They can't throw a good-looking punch. And they can go all out for an hour with their cardio, but they can't put together 5 minutes worth of psychology to draw you into a contest instead of a car wreck. So I don't know what to say. But I wouldn't trust any of these motherfuckers picking me up, spinning me around, and dropping me in the vicinity of my head. And again, I've taken everybody's. I've been tombstoned by The Undertaker and pile driven by Jerry Lawler and figure four'd by Ric Flair and pressed over the heads of Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors. And I was, as I've admitted, awful nervous about and thought it was fucking crazy, the scaffold. But otherwise, I've never felt like I could potentially be bringing my goddamn life to an end or end up a goddamn body cast over doing something.
What about when you work with Baby Doll?
All right, only once. She fucking slapped me and my head spun like Linda Blair's, but yeah, it's just
Osprey's like the next generation, even though, it's not a real generation, but the next generation of Omega and that style of every match is a big match that goes a while. You kick out of everything.
They point to the ropes they're going to run to. They turn their back on their opponent to run to the ropes for no reason with the fancy dancing.
Yeah. And Omega looks like he could barely walk, or he can't walk without being in pain. So, I mean, it's not.
Well, or he looks like he's got a corn cob up his ass. One of those things has to be true.
I guess my point is it's not a style. I'm going to be really interested to see how a lot of these guys are in their 50s, just because, every generation you say that about. Oh, what's Dynamite Kid going to look like when he was 50? Well, he was in a wheelchair and he lost a leg or something. What's Mick Foley going to look like? Well, he says he has to tell his stories over and over again because he has no memory. What's this group of guys? A lot of them, a lot smaller than Mick Foley and even Dynamite because of all the stuff he was on. They're a different body frame, some of these guys. What are they going to look like in their 50s?
I don't know, but all I know is that the whole idea of wrestling is to protect yourself, and from a professional standpoint, is to protect yourself and your opponent while giving the people the impression that you're doing everything you can to beat shit out of each other. But they've dropped the protecting themselves and their opponent in favor of, oh, we could do this big stunt and we could do it this way. And it ends up looking phony because it requires so much cooperation. And it's goddamn dangerous because you have variables that can't be controlled. Which way is that table leg going to fucking fly? Is this time that I run into this wall or this barricade or whatever going to be the time that my fucking joint pops out?
I had that thought when they were both on the top rope. I'm like, man, what if this is when one of them slips? I mean, again, we see top rope stuff all the time, but it's a different level of stuff, especially when you're planning on not just like going over and down, but like multiple flips to land on your feet or whatever it is. So much can go wrong. And again, I guess that's his gimmick. He does all these things, but it's not just him. There's a lot of people just do everything they can in their repertoire, so you get to see it every time they come out there. And
I can't understand how, and then we'll move on. I can't understand it because of it's completely opposite of what the goal of this business has always been. And first, make it look good. That's why guys always said, lay it in, make it look, if there was an error, you wanted to err on the side of people can't see through this, it doesn't look fake. So yeah, and you could legitimately rationalize, okay, you hard weight me, boom, a little punch to the fucking eye to the cheek, whatever, it's a goddamn black eye. Or get a little color, it's a fucking cut with a razor blade. Or take this big fucking chair shot to the head because I know how to throw it and you know how to take it. That if everybody's a professional and you do whatever you're doing correctly, you may get hurt. That hurt, but you're not going to be injured. You're not going to be having surgery. You're not going to miss work. And it's going to look real, and it's going to add to the money you're going to make because people are going to buy into this. Now they're doing shit that obviously is phony when people already know everything's phony to begin with, and it looks even faker. That may end up with them being hospitalized or having surgery because they're falling off of something from 20 feet in the air or being dropped on their heads. I don't get that. Yeah, if it's going to help fucking make the business look real, punch me in the face. But I don't care what it helps or what it makes anybody look like. Don't drop me on my head off a fucking ladder from 15 feet. That's just stupid. Anyway, you know what else was stupid? Starting out the show on April 16th with the Owen Tournament female division with Mercedes Moon against Athena, and then letting them go 21 minutes from bell to bell. I know Boston is Mercedes' hometown. They were a hot crowd there in Boston for Mercedes and for a variety of other things, hotter than AEW's been having lately. I didn't sense a Punk in Chicago reaction. But did she have to go 21 fucking minutes bell to bell? And then when they ran out of shit, she rolled her up?
Well, at least they finally found a crowd to chant CEO.
Did Athena lose weight? Is she the one with the formerly big satchel ass that was always stiff and reckless and landing on people?
I think that is maybe how you described her at the time, yes.
Well, she looks good now. She's lost the satchel in her ass.
She's been starving in Ring of Honor.
Yeah, that's true. The wrestlers in Ring of Honor aren't on steroids. They're not even on food. But I was hoping that she might land on fucking Mercedes where we get a break from her. But the one time you want her to do something, she didn't do it. Anyway, you don't have anything to say about that match, do you?
No.
No. Okay, in the back, Renee Moxley Good had Hangnail Adam Page, and the Buckaroos came in. You know, the maggots used to call Joe Biden Sleepy Joe. I'm going to start calling Okada Sleepy O. Cool. Can anybody bother to wake him up when he comes to work? Do you think maybe they've stolen Okada from New Japan against his will, and he's doing all these things because he's drugged and can't resist? That's why he's in a coma whenever you see him?
There's so many.
You don't think there's
so many
to
questions about the entirety of the Okada run so far, and what are his motivations, and why is any of at this point, I don't think anyone's expecting him all of a sudden to become great or anything. But why this? Why any of this? At least he was wearing a suit that was the right size this week.
Well, it's the one the Undertaker picked out for him. But Maddie accepted the apology that Paige didn't give for whatever they did before, and they did their regular fake promo where they're playing heels, but they want you to know they're playing heels because nobody would ever actually act that way, even if they were heels. And then they offered to patch things up with Dick the Boozer and the Boar Horseman because we got to get that settled. And then Okada tried to do comedy by calling Paige a bitch, but then he took it back when Paige called him on it, but then he made a face of some description. And then Hangnail went out in the Owen Hart tournament to face wild card, or the wild card entrant, which I thought wasn't. I thought the Yahoo they debuted 2 weeks ago was the wild card entrant. Kevin Knight, wasn't he a wild card? How many wild cards they have?
No,
here?
Kevin Knight replaced Jay White because Jay White got hurt, I think.
That's right. He's another one they sent to the hospital. So Josh Alexander from TNA, I've never watched him wrestle, but I have heard the name, the walking weapon, Josh Alexander. He's been in TNA. He debuts here. They've apparently just signed him. He got a pop when his name popped up on the screen because this is, again, they were a hotter crowd and also even smarter and more inside, it seemed like, than a lot of the crowds that AEW has been getting lately. But what the fuck? What the fuck? They bring this guy in. They announce they signed him. They debut him on television. We've never heard his goddamn voice. He didn't have a promo, not that I saw. And they put him in a tournament match with I guess he's going to be a heel. I couldn't really tell from the work, really. But they beat him with Paige. And what the fuck? They did it again. So now we know that this guy is in hell at 13 minutes. He's a guy that comes in, has a good match, and he loses. And the announcers, in selling him to us at the start of the match, said, well, he wears that headgear because he had a cauliflower ear reattached surgically back years ago. And by the way, he's also had neck fusion surgery and overcome that. He's already bald and he doesn't look like he's 25 years old anymore. So now we've got a guy that has come in. We know all of his weaknesses. His ear fell off his head and he's got a bad neck. And he's not as young as he used to be. And then he loses the match. And this is the way they debut a new fucking talent. Help me, Brian.
And again, they need talent. If you can't get them from WWE, or at least until they release people, you can get them from TNA, I guess. If you were going to do something with him, why beat him night one?
Again, the people were cheering for Adam Page, but I couldn't tell from the match, from the work of the match, who the babyface, who the heel was. And they did nothing. And they just started out with some bit of wrestling. It was serious wrestling, looked tight. And then in 1 minute, they were trading forearms. And then Page goes ahead and does his stuff, just like he's working with a guy that's been there for a year, instead of making sure that the people, first thing they see is Alexander looking good. And then Page has to figure out a way to work to come back from that. At one point, they're on the floor. Alexander missed a boot and straddled the railing. And I swear to God, had to sit there, stock still motionless, for Page to run around up the ramp and jump off the ramp to clothesline him. And there was a little bit of heat on Page. No heel shit. He just, Alexander took control, and then Page bowed up and fought back. But that's what I wrote. This was Alexander's chance to go out and get over. He's just doing moves. We've never seen him, never heard him speak. The match needed to stand out, and he needed to be established as a threat at the start of the match so that then Page would have something to struggle out from underneath, and then maybe blow a longer comeback at the end to make up for that. But then you're still beating Alexander, which is insanity in his first appearance on television. If you've signed him long-term, to establish him immediately as a loser. And then in the phony department, since they were kind enough to tell us that he's got a bad neck, Alexander kicked out of a tombstone pile driver. Guy with a bad neck. But he couldn't kick out of the small package. That's what Page beat him with. 1, 2, 3. So they couldn't even beat the guy with a bad neck with a tombstone pile driver. Then I'll just small package you. Boom. What is wrong with these people?
Which people? Tony Khan for booking this guy to lose, or these two guys for booking this match, or the agent?
All of these people. They don't have agents. They might have babysitters. I don't think they got it. So then Felcher and Don Fallis came out, and Kyle and Page had a sloppy fight until Alexander got the nod from Callis, and he attacked Page and powerbombed him and then walked out while Kyle picked Page up and gave him a beautiful brainbuster. See, if Kyle Felcher can do a brainbuster like that, and he had, let's say, 8 weeks in a row of matches that lasted about 7 minutes where he beat a middle card guy with that brainbuster. why then that brain buster would be something that might make people nervous. But in the meantime, blah. And I bet somebody convinced Alexander when he came in and like, they're beating me. Oh, but you get to powerbomb him afterwards. I bet that they convinced him that would make some kind of difference in this. But yeah, so thanks for coming, Josh. You're, I guess, pretty useless at this point.
Welcome to AEW.
He didn't look bad, but anyway. The 9 o'clock hour was the World Tag Team title match between the Hurt Syndicate and Bishop Khan and Tia Leone, the Gates of Agony. Weren't these guys in the group? Remember, now did Jake Roberts sell Archer and or Cage to Don Fallis, and in return, Jake got, because he had these guys, didn't he? And didn't he get some Mexican guys?
Jake didn't have these guys. These guys were mixed up with with Prince Nana and the embassy, weren't they?
Son of a bitch, you're right. Well, now they're managerless and rudderless. I thought they came in with the trade with the Mexicans to Jake.
No, that was Lance Archer in exchange for Hechicero and Beast Mordos and Gravity.
How's Jake doing with them Mexicans?
I haven't seen Jake again. I never saw Jake ever again.
Never saw Jake again, did we? Well, he got the better end of the deal then.
Well, since 93, they've been trying to get him back into Mexico for various reasons. They're still upset with him for turning on Conan.
So the Gates of Agony, who have no manager, had a World Tag Team title match against the Hurt Syndicate because Hurt Syndicate has no teams to work with. And they have to give jobber teams who not only never win, we never even see these guys anymore. But they got to give them tag team title matches because of the sorry state of affairs that their talent roster exists in. So the heels jump-started this, and they isolated Shelton for a little while and got some heat on him. The smaller one looks better, but these guys are green and sloppy. And Aubrey Ed, by the way, is completely useless as a referee. She has a great fucking pose, and she always hits the right number when you ask her what's 2 + 2, and she stomps her foot 4 times. But good God. Hurt Syndicate took over after the first couple minutes, and they beat up the little one and went to a break on this match that didn't last that long and didn't probably need to last as long as it did. When they came back, Shelton and the little one, I don't know which is which, were down, and the little one tagged the big one, and the big one came in and tripped over the middle rope, stepping through, and fell down. And then popped up and tried to make a comeback on Shelton and hit part of it. And they got a 4-way. Everybody was lost because you can't. I could see members of the Hurt Syndicate trying to send by mental telepathy information to these fucking guys, but they weren't picking up on it. They didn't have their antennas up. And finally, Shelton Germaned the little one, Bobby speared the big one, and then speared the little one, and 1, 2, 3. And these guys, the Gates of Agony, they're so big compared to the rest of the roster, especially, and they look like they could be something. And I think they wanted to try to have a match with these guys, but it just, they ain't there yet. The Gates, that is. And again, now it's the Hurt Syndicate trying to make the best of a bad situation and make this off-brand team competitive, because who else they got to fucking, you can't put, I'm sure you'll never see the Buckaroos in the ring with Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley.
I'd pay to see it.
I would pay to see it too, but that's why I'm sure you never will. I mean, it would be visually ridiculous on the surface of it and a complete style clash, and there's no way that any of the Hurts could sell for any of them without destroying their image.
I'd pay for both Bucks against MVP. I'd pay to see that too.
I still think visually it'd be ridiculous until a few more Cucamongan showed up.
Cucamongans.
That's the natives of Cucamonga, or the Cucamongans. And they're among us, the Cucamongans. But there's nobody. It's sad.
And the other thing is, clearly they have the demeanor of heels, but the fans are totally reacting to them like they're the baby faces. But maybe that's part of it, because they have the demeanor of heels and they're stars.
They have the demeanor of stars.
Yeah, and they're stars.
They have the demeanor of grown adults that kick people's asses and do impressive things and carry themselves like they're somebody, instead of these grungy, fucking no account, as Mama Cornette would say, no account nitwits that come out in their goddamn floppy clothes and fucking ass off playing wrestler. But nevertheless, the Hurt Syndicate were still in the ring when here came MJF, and they were chanting MJF here in Boston. And they cheered the Hurt Syndicate. They chanted MJF because MJF, again, running on past glory as far as being a heel. But MJF was better here because he's poking Bobby Lashley verbally. But he's trying to impress the Hurt Syndicate as a group. But he can't resist, because he's a little weasel. He can't resist giving Bobby the jabs, right? But he's still trying to impress them, so they'll get the 3 thumbs up. And he brings out 7 rent-a-hoors in various kinds of black dresses and presented them to the Hurt business for a night out on the town in exchange for 3 thumbs up. First of all, Brian, why did they weren't wearing the same kind of dress, but they were all color coordinated? Do you think when he called the escort service, he said all of the dresses have to match in their own way? And secondly, is this the state of professional models in Boston, Massachusetts, that we got? There was a whooping crane in there. There was a little bitty one. There was they were all over the page. But I like the concept, but it's always the same thing, whether it was the Flair and Steamboat deal that they did in Cleveland on the Clash of Champions in '89, or one of the entrances on pay-per-view. Whenever they get just models, girls that are told to show up and dress in a slutty demeanor, they look like you can tell they're clueless about what's going on. They would never be at a wrestling match. They don't have any idea what's happening here. And they're in their own way, because there's so many of them. Invariably, there's a few ugly ones that kind of brings the whole thing down. Was that a question I asked you?
It doesn't bother me. I think if MJF showed up with models that look ridiculously good, like they wouldn't be anywhere near a wrestling show, even if they wouldn't even be modeling for anything MJF would get his hands on, it makes it unreasonable. These look like girls from Wiggles. This looks like MJF went down there and said, let me get the finest strippers you got. I need to impress the Hurt Syndicate.
But those, what kind of strippers they got up in Boston then? Those weren't
with the lights on. How many strippers have you seen with the lights on? It changes everything. There are a lot of lights.
I've inspected a couple of strippers up close.
With the lights on?
That's well, in all varieties, including with flashlights. And I'll tell you what.
Don't tell me.
But here's the thing. It used to piss me off, because when I would see these angles, and especially when they did the one with Flair with the women's, they were skinny and looked like models. They weren't as pretty as the girls we had coming to the matches. They looked fake. And they were fucking fashion model types instead of fucking real wrestling arena rats. And we had better girls. Flair had better women that he was going out with afterwards for free than the ones that they purchased for him on television. So the point is, I'm saying these looked a little phony to me. Like they had no idea what the fuck they were doing there.
But you don't. But it doesn't. You don't want them to act like they know what they're doing there. You want them to be clueless hookers that MJF got for the Hurt Syndicate.
Well, but they weren't really all over the boys. I mean, there should have been some goddamn fondling and maybe grab assing,
Snatch, grab ass? What?
Snatch grabbing and things of that nature.
Well, there was one that was very hands-on.
Grab of the ass.
The one that came in with the gunt. She was kind of very hands-on, it looked like.
Well, anyway. But so Shelton is liking it, and he was mesmerized. But as MJF is doing his pitch, I need more time. And he's pointing to his wrist. And MJF, oh, you want my watch? Well, I'll give you this watch for a thumbs up. And Shelton puts the thumb out. It's starting to go up. But then he sees Bobby Lashley looking at him, and it goes back down. And that's when MJF said, you must be out of your democracy. I love it. And he changes his tune because Lashley is up in his face. And I wrote, this is good shit, pal. Because MJF wants to bow up and cuss Bobby Lashley out, but he would kill him. And MJF knows that, so he's trying to stay cool, and he's the weasel in the thing. He's trying to get this done. And MJF gives Shelton the watch anyway. And you can have the ladies too. And he said, when I do join the Hurt Syndicate, there's going to be plenty more watches and women. And then he told Bob, you're the almighty, but just remember, MJF is better than you, and you know it. And Bobby's pissed, and MJF leaves, and Shelton is over there talking to the women. I like this thing. I'm just getting a kick out of it. It's not these children doing their floor exercise gymnastics routine over and over, or the stupid shit with Moxley. It's guys that can talk. People are interested. They look professional. See where it's going. It's some kind of story rather than a dream match.
You don't know where it's going. That's one of the things that helps. It's not obvious.
Because it's hard to change Bobby Lashley's mind once he's set on something.
I think everyone's been great in this. I think Bobby Lashley, it's actually bringing out some of the best stuff he does. Not in terms of the wrestling. I'm just talking in terms of these angles.
Yeah.
MJF, he's not flipping out for no reason. He's not talking about his emotions. I think the fans are starting to react to him again, the way they were. I think he has done a great job at various different times of getting past bad booking that was long-term, like the Jericho feud. The Adam Cole thing's not going to be as easy. Well, it's not as easy. He's working on that now still, and I think he's kind of done it. MVP's been great, but to me, the highlight of this whole thing, Shelton is like the most underrated character on wrestling TV. Just his facial expressions, the way he reacts to things. I've been saying it for a while. AEW has used Shelton Benjamin better than WWE.
And I can't disagree with that. And I think part of it is that Shelton's not standing there by himself. He's got two other grown adult professionals with him. So it's not like he's floating around by himself with everybody else going, hey, let's do this and do that. He's got a group there that they can all pitch in experienced, logical, sane, rational shit instead of, just, hey, let's do something and have a big spot. So can you think of anybody that has come to AEW that was more over 3 months later than they were their first night in, except for Lashley and Benjamin and MVP?
I'd have to think about it. I can't off the top of my head think of it.
Well, that tells you something right there. But the thing, Brian, though, the one mistake MJF is making here, you realize that, don't you? The mistake he's making?
I don't know.
He gave them women. Look at Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley. They can get their own women. And he gave them a Rolex watch. Well, they can get their own Rolex watches. They've been big boys for a while. They've made big money. He needs to give them some kind of gift that they can't just get anywhere else at any old run-of-the-mill bodega somewhere in a Subway. He's got to give them something that's truly prized, that's truly valuable, that truly means something, that would put them forever in his debt. I think, Brian, to be honest with you, I'm going to call it right now. I think he needs to haul out the Raycon everyday wireless earbuds. I think he needs to play the Raycon card.
Well, if you're going to give him Women in Time, you got to give him song. And what better way to listen to song than on Raycon?
Well, nevertheless, folks, with the Raycon everyday earbuds in the ears of the Hurt Syndicate, that way they'd be able to listen to their favorite music when they go to the gym and work out and pump those big muscles. Or when they're out on the town enjoying the nightlife, they wouldn't have to listen to all those models that they've got nattering in their ear. They can just look at them while they're listening to more exciting music. Or they can just punch that active noise cancellation button, and they don't have to listen to any of the AEW locker room gossip and drama. They can tune the children out. And once again, listen to what they want to listen to. And folks, Raycon's everyday earbuds not only start at just half the price of the other premium audio brands, they have the quick charge function, the 32-hour battery life, the multi-point connectivity, and they come in a spectrum of vibrant colors. So Mother's Day is coming up, and you want to get your mom something, get her something in a pretty color. Get her a pink or a bird's egg blue, or maybe even some type of vibrant fuchsia. But whatever your mother's favorite color is, and if they don't have your mom's favorite color, tell your mom.
They may not have some of those colors, but they have standard colors you will love.
Well, who's to say what's standard? I mean, some people have different tastes and way of looking at the world. Say somebody wants burnt magenta. I think that Raycon should honor at least their request to try to create a burnt magenta. But folks, if you want an earbud of a different color, and if your mom doesn't have a favorite color, then give her one. As a matter of fact, get her one black one and one blue one, and then you can say, I made my mom black and blue for Mother's Day. See what you get?
Why would anyone want to say that? Why would anyone want to say that?
It'll get attention. It's just like when Sputnik Monroe.
No.
Sputnik Monroe said one time, I know a place in Mexico that you can get a pair of boots with a big dick and balls engraved on the side. And somebody asked Sputnik, said, well, why, Sputnik, would you want a pair of boots with a big dick and balls engraved on the side? And he said, because you walk into a bar wearing them son of a bitches, you can get in a fight in 5 minutes. So, folks, right now, if you want to walk into a bar wearing the Raycon everyday wireless earbuds, go to buyraycon.com. That's BUYRAYCON, buyraycon.com/JCE, and you're going to get 20% off site-wide, whatever you buy, from one side of the site to the other, and it's a wide site. You're going to get 20% off. Get several pair. Get one for your mom. Get one for her mom. Get one for, potentially if you have, well, baby mamas spread out all over the place. You might want to get one for every set of women that you have procreated with. But whatever. A lot of people are having babies around Mother's Day. So get them earbuds. buyraycon.com/JCE, Brian.
Well, obviously, Jim, there's no time to listen to music now. We have to get back to Dynamite, and we actually do because it's kind of a pickup of the last segment with the Hurt Syndicate and MJF.
Well, yes, because then they came back to the backstage area after some more foolishness had transpired, and MVP was talking to the Hurts. Obviously, they had the girls there. Shelton was still distracted. I believe they kicked the young female interviewer, Alicia, a toot. They kicked a toot out. And MVP was
telling... A toot got the boot.
A toot got the boot. Don't get your nose in a snoot over it. And MVP tells the Hurt Syndicate, look, we can use MJF. This is business. We can use him to get what we want. And if he gets out of line, then... So already he's trying to work from within to get Bobby to kind of lighten up a little bit, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all will end well between MJF and the rest of the Hurt Syndicate. So we got a cliffhanger there is what we got. Anyhow, we already talked about the marathon Owen Hart tournament match, 22 minutes bell to bell of Osprey and our friend Take. And then we came to the main event of the evening. And apparently, the heels, of course, they said the heels attacked Hook earlier and took him out. But Samoa Joe and Shapoopy are still going to face Dick the Boozer and the Boar Horseman for the 6-man tag team title, and they're going to get a surprise partner. But Brian, think of it, because they just hospitalized Pac last week, right? Now the world champion, Dick the Boozer, has to team with his stooges, Claudio and Wheeler, to defend the 6-man tag team title against Samoa Joe and the Ops. So
Freebird rules, obviously.
But he's the world champion. So nevertheless, instead of Hook, and that's why I mean, it's AEW. He could legitimately be hurt and injured, and they made this change, but they brought out Powerhouse Hobbs. And there's also an element of maybe they thought, well, with what we're going to do, you know, Hook's a nice young man, but he's not ready to be involved in this. But they should have thought the same thing about Shapoopy. So they have the same match. The pretend badass and the Stooges walk in through the lobby off the street, and they jump started into a 6-way at 9:58 p.m. Eastern. And so they go into the overrun. They went to a break at 10:02. And when they come back, they have the rest of the match. Well, then everybody is down. Everybody's down and incapacitated. And here comes Maddie and Nikki, the Hardley boys. And they're going to menace somebody doing something. But Swerve comes out of the crowd and jumps both of them. It gives them both the double stomp and tosses both of them over the rail into the crowd. So apparently
and then Nana bit Kenny Omega's arm.
Yeah.
And Mega ran away with the dog. Or was Kenny, actually?
Actually, I thought, well, I'm not sure which one was Mega and which one was the dog, but he tossed him over the rail. Shapoopy got the sleeper on Claudio on the ramp. And Hobbs gave Wheeler Useless a rock bottom on the announce desk. And then Marina Schaefer came in and hit Hobbs with a chair, which he didn't sell, but Willow came in and took Marina Schaefer out, and Joe got the fucking sleeper on Dick the Boozer. And as soon as he slapped it on, the referee called it instantly. There was not only no tap, there was like a second. So it wasn't either that he tapped or that he obviously was put out. It was, oh shit, that's the finish. And there they got new 6-man tag team champions. Brian, I said to you before we went on the air, without talking about this in detail, I just said, I can't believe that they did what they did after they've done what they've done. This fucking guy, Moxley, has been no-selling everybody, beating the shit out of everybody, choked out everybody for all this time. And the Death Riders have been so indestructible for all this time. And suddenly on free TV, and I'm not saying Samoa Joe, I think, should be in the world title picture. I don't know why he's fucking around with fucking Shibata as a partner who's just useless. No appeal, no charisma, no nothing. And we love Hobbs, but he just brought him into this because they hurt the other guy. They've been doing this for months, and with no planning, no buildup, and a free TV match with a guy out of nowhere, they choke the fucking plumber out. Now he loses. What is going on here? Can you believe that? Again, I want Moxley and anybody involved with him to lose every match they have. But can you believe after all they've done to this point, they just did that now?
It was surprising, but I guess they want to set up a reason for people to think Samoa Joe may beat him when he beats Samoa Joe. Or Moxley said, if you choke me out, I'll only do it for a second. Because that was a really quick thing. There's no sense in doing it here. If you were going to give a victory over Moxley to someone, and I like Samoa Joe, is that the person to do it to?
What was it? And you know what? It may be because it's better than Copeland, who's 50-something years older. But why just out of the blue like this in a meaningless match? Somebody's going, oh, they won the 6-man title. Did anybody even remember that these guys had the 6-man title to lose? Does anybody give a shit about the 6-man title, and have they ever? No. It's what ruined the tag team division. But again, he's beaten Swerve like a fucking dog. He's choked out Edge. He's done this and that. Then suddenly the 6-man tag. Now's the time they beat him and choke him out. No recourse. No fucking get even. They've got a stadium show coming up. Now I want to see Samoa Joe and Moxley. I bet that's not what's going to be in the stadium, but Joe's the only one that can fucking beat him. Is that going to be in the stadium? I think they should have started earlier, maybe. Why is Samoa Joe having to babysit children in a 3-man team called the Ops? He can talk, he can work, he's a former world champion, and the people believe in him. So now he's one of the 6-man tag team champions with poor Will Hobbs floundering and Shapoopy.
Don't forget Hook, who we last saw puking on TV.
And somebody said, oh, well, he might have had a concussion. And I didn't see what they did to him beforehand, poor Hook, that he might be puking because of the concussion. Or maybe he was just puking because he was blowed to fuck up because he was nervous and I don't know what. But then why couldn't they say that the angle that they did last week put him out instead of, well, they jumped him again after they fucking...
A jet ski landed on his face. He couldn't be here.
So anyway, that was that piece of programming. And now we'll see that somebody's finally beaten Moxley. It just came out of nowhere and we don't have a clear idea of where it's fucking going. But of course, that applies to most AEW programming. Final thoughts on this show?
On the match, not really my thing. Claudio versus Shibata, that part was specifically not my thing. At least they make Willow look good. Willow gets to take down Marina. I guess we'll get that match at some point. And it was fun. You know, the one thing that's funny about the smaller building, with the big arenas, there's kind of a walkway. There's a place to go. With this one, because everyone was so jammed into whatever it was, like 2,500 or whatever it was in that building, and it looked great. But like security had to like really make sure they got in front of Moxley to get people out of the way so he could get to the ring. You know, the main event stuff has been bad, but there's been good stuff on the show. And I think the stuff with the Hurt Syndicate and MJF has stood out and been a highlight. I didn't mind Takeshita versus Will Ospreay, although I agree with every single thing you said about it. But I kind of knew that's Will Ospreay's match. I'd be surprised when he works a different kind of match. I knew what it would be. The Young Bucks stuff, no. The Adam Page stuff, no. Josh Alexander, maybe next time. The Mercedes Moné 20-minute match, no. What am I forgetting? I'm forgetting something. At least we didn't get to see... well, I shouldn't even do that because then I could start ripping everyone apart. But yeah, I guess I liked one segment on the show. Now that
yeah.
1.5, 2 segments on the show. Somewhere in there.
Somewhere around there. Well, that was AEW Dynamite, and now we're going to be concentrating going forward on the WWE offerings. But before we go to the ratings, my fine feathered fiend, what in the world is happening at the Arcadian Vanguard Network this week?
I had a feeling you may be going there. Hello again, friends. Let me tell you about this week and every week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information about all of our shows. Most of them don't have laughter. But get information about all of our shows at ArcadianVanguard. No, that's not where you go. Get information about all the shows. Get our t-shirts at ArcadianVanguard.com, on Twitter at Superpodcast, and on Facebook at Facebook.com/ArcadianVanguard. Of course, each and every day, get the wrestling news. When I say no laughter, a serious wrestling show, no opinion, no conjecture, no paywall, just the wrestling news, each and every day, free for you in the morning with the morning newscast at thewrestlingnews.com or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Want to make mention of Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon this week, and actually the last several weeks, guests from WWF's past. That's not really the way to put it, but guys who used to work in the office.
And now I bet you don't remember this young lady that you took to her senior prom.
Ed Holinsky was just on the show, and Tom Buchanan, the photographer, just on the show. So if you're someone interested in the inner workings of Titan Sports, the WWF in the 80s and 90s, check these out. SUAWpod.com, or look for Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon wherever you find your favorite podcast. And of course, Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam continues their look 40 years ago, 1985, in the WWF. Hear it today, McAdamPod.com, or Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam wherever you find your favorite podcast. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! One day we'll be out of court and you will get a new episode. But go through the archive, 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. The Mothership.
Well, now we need some dramatic organ music, dun-dun-dun-dun, to find out if anybody watched the AEW programming on April 16th, and if so, how many, and what did they like, and what did they not?
This is indeed what we need. Let's go to the ratings here. Let me find the ratings here. They were here.
This is indeed what we need.
These ratings, AEW Dynamite on TBS, Wednesday, April 16th, 2025, 8 to 10:14 p.m.
It was a big one.
On average, watched by 624,000 viewers.
Oops, they're going back down in their little range they've got. Is it 600? Is it 650? Is it 625 every week? And now they're right there in the middle of the pocket.
They indeed are, and according to WrestleNomics, down 5% from last week, 659. Down 3% from the trailing 4-week average of 644. So let's now go to the quarterly numbers. Again, these were compiled by WrestleNomics.
Not including Max.
Not including Max, which obviously would put this in the millions, tens of millions. But Jim, here are the quarterly numbers. Again, compiled by WrestleNomics. Quarter 1, 8 to 8:15 p.m. Athena versus Mercedes Moné with picture-in-picture. 651,000 viewers.
Oh boy. Okay. So we are going to have one of those shows where they start with just the faithful and they keep their audience for the most part, because that is the lowest starting point that I can remember in the weeks and weeks and weeks that we've been doing this. And they're only 27,000 off their average. So they've got to be pretty constant through this whole thing.
Yeah, and obviously it's well off the trend line of the last 90 days. But quarter
what
two...
What was last week's open? Was like 760 something or whatever.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but quarter 2, 8:15, 8:30 p.m. The continuation of Athena versus Moné, the post-match with Timeless Tony Storm, Hangman Adam Page and the Elite's backstage angle, and an ad break. 629,000 viewers.
Yeah. Last week was I know last week they didn't lose that badly either. We mentioned that they held up fairly well last week. This week they only lost 22,000 people, and that's almost never occurred in the course of a first quarter, second quarter loss. So they're on a good pace to have the few they have at the start stay with them.
Well, we go to quarter 3, 8:30 to 8:45 p.m. Hangman Adam Page versus Josh Alexander with picture-in-picture. 561,000 viewers.
Ouch. Okay. They're apparently going to have some people come back at this point. And that, you know, they give a guy that much time that nobody's ever seen and that they're just introducing. You know, it wasn't fair to him, but that's what happens.
Well, we go now to quarter four, 8:45 to 9 p.m. The continuation of Alexander versus Hangman, the post-match with the Don Callis family, an ad break, the Patriarchy's backstage angle, and a recap of Collision. 611,000 viewers.
Good Lord. So 50,000 came back suddenly after they lost 39. They lost 68 and 50 came back. That's odd, but go ahead.
Interesting enough, just because of the way of the graph here, right here between quarter four and quarter five, which I'll tell you in a second, it intersects with the 90-day trend line. Like right here is where it equals out. Like this is where it would be. Quarter five, 9 to 9:15 p.m., the big 9 o'clock hour, the Hurt Syndicate versus the Gates of Agony with picture-in-picture, and the post-match with MJF, 635,000 viewers.
Boom, they're back up to the best quarter that they've done since the start. And the people saw, something going on there.
Well, they saw more of that in quarter six, 9:15 to 9:30 p.m., the continuation of the Hurt Syndicate MJF live angle, an ad break, the Hurt Syndicate backstage with the Hookers, and the start of Konosuke Takeshita versus Will Ospreay, 682,000 viewers.
Good Lord. So there's another 47,000. That is their high. Have they ever had the high point of the show in quarter six before?
They must have over 5 years, but I couldn't cite an example. It's also the high point in a key demo and a big spike from 217 to 274.
People haven't given up on Ospreay yet. They're working on making them, but they haven't done it yet.
Well, I think it's Ospreay, but I also think it's a little bit of the Hurt Syndicate MJF stuff picking up steam. It went for a while, and all of a sudden there were women in there. So I think that contributed too. But we go.
That's
now.
One thing you don't see a lot of around the AEW bunch is women.
We go now. They should do what Bischoff used to do and hire models to just sit in the audience and clap at nothing. Let's go now to quarter seven, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m. Konosuke Takeshita versus Will Ospreay continued with picture-in-picture, 681,000 viewers.
And they held them. Not bad. Again, that's a thing. If you had somebody booking this fucking guy, Ospreay, and giving him a direction, the people want to like him and they watch him on television. If there was somebody to produce him and give him some coherent thing and an opponent that you were setting him up for this goddamn dynamic confrontation down the road, not because it'd be a great dream match, but because everybody's going to want to see what's going to happen when these two guys fight, you've got something. Because Tony can't even run the people away from Ospreay with his rotten booking. So that means that you've got something there they could take advantage of if they knew what they were doing.
Well, we go now to quarter eight. I remind you, we have a 14-minute overrun. That's a quarter right there. Quarter eight, 9:45 to 10 p.m. Konosuke Takeshita versus Will Ospreay continued. An ad break, and the start of the Death Riders versus Powerhouse Hobbs and the Ops. 599,000 viewers. 14-minute overrun. Continuation of that six-man match. 565,000 viewers.
Yeah, see, that's what happened at the end is they stuck Moxley out there.
That's right.
And he does what he always did. And they lost 126,000 people from quarter seven through the end of quarter nine, might as well say.
The best parts of the show are the parts of the show that gained and picked up steam. The MJF Hurt Syndicate stuff and Ospreay Takeshita, again, acknowledging everything you thought of the match, when you look at the other matches on this show, that's the match that stands out. You know it's Will Ospreay. You're going to get something out of it. Moxley, they went away. They completely went away for Alexander versus Hangman Adam Page, coming out of the Hangman Adam Page Young Bucks backstage angle. They got a couple things.
Well, at least instead of starting big and dropping steadily, now they're starting but they go up and down in the middle. There's something to be said for going up and down in the middle, Brian.